The same year Milwaukee drafted Giannis, they signed Larry Sanders to a fat contract as their defensive centerpiece. Bucks saw Giannis and Sanders terrorizing the league. Giannis guarding wings with Larry at the basket, blocking shots, running the floor, covering insane ground. But that never happened. Within 16 months of signing a new $44 million deal, Sanders disappeared. He walked away from the game as a starting NBA player in his prime at 26 years old. Why? Oh, people speculated he's a drug addict, a hothead after a nightclub fight, or worse, he was a bad person, was cited 2 times for animal cruelty. But when the truth finally came out, it flipped the entire story upside down. So Larry's from South Florida, born in 1988 to a single mom in a rough neighborhood. Didn't even play basketball, but carried one everywhere he went. Carrying a ball was my past, like, oh, he's going to play basketball. But if I didn't have that ball, I probably would have had to attach myself to a gang to protect myself. But I didn't even play. Instead, Larry was super introverted and artsy. He liked painting and making music. But when you're like 7 feet tall at 15 years old, you kind of don't have a choice. A basketball coach at school saw him and was like, hey kid, you are trying out for the team. So Larry made varsity basically by accident. Now, Larry was super raw, but he stood out for his size, length, and instincts. He just knew exactly when to jump for a block or swipe for the ball on defense. But he didn't play AAU or go to these scouting camps, so Larry was unknown to college scouts till a little school named VCU offered Larry a scholarship. And by his junior year, he popped off. Averaged 14 points, 9 boards, and 3 blocks as a junior. Had a 7'7" wingspan and was named one of the most exciting players in college by Sports Illustrated. So a kid who did not play basketball until 15 years old, no elite training, made himself a first-round NBA draft prospect in under 5 years. And sure enough, in the 2010 draft, the Bucks selected him 15th overall, just outside of the lottery. Now, as expected, he struggled on the court his first 2 seasons. Larry averaged just 4 points and 3 boards, barely cracked the rotation, but off the court was even tougher. He said, I come from nothing, and then you become the one in your community that has everything. People are supposed to guide you, become your dependents, and you're too young for that. You can find yourself in a very vulnerable position. I felt so alone. But 2 things changed his life. The first was smoking weed, which he tried for the first time when he got to the league. Larry says it acted like medication for his anxiety and depression. The other thing was year 3 in the NBA. That year, Larry broke out and turned a corner. He suddenly averaged a double-double, even had a triple-double with blocks. 10, 12, and 10 against Minnesota in 2012. So dominant at the rim that players shot just 42% at the basket against him. So the front office, feeling like they had their defensive centerpiece, gave Larry a 4-year, $44 million extension. The GM said Larry has worked hard to put himself in this position. He earned this. But unfortunately for Larry and the Bucks, that unraveled quick. He got in a bar fight and was out 25 games with a broken thumb. He then tested positive for THC and his role and minutes plummeted. Meanwhile, Milwaukee just drafted Giannis at 15, same spot they took Larry 3 years earlier, and the franchise started to shift its attention to him. So Larry's last day in the facility was Christmas Eve 2014. The Bucks had just lost 8 of 12 games, and coach Jason Kidd told everybody to cancel Christmas because they had to practice instead. Larry was so heated that he confronted Jay Kidd, ended up having a panic attack, and had to check himself into a hospital. It turned out that Sanders had deep underlying mental health issues that needed to be addressed fast. This was an emergency. Now, smoking weed had helped, but not anymore. He already got popped again by the league, and he was so out of control, police were called when he left his dogs out in the freezing cold. So Larry then checked himself into another mental health facility, but this one was for long-term help. So now dude had a choice. Do I get the help that I need or return to the NBA and just try to tough it out? So in February 2015, Larry Sanders agreed to give the Bucks back $15 million to get out of the NBA. It was a shock because nobody had walked away from that much guaranteed money in their prime the way that Larry Sanders did. 26 years old, no injuries, a starting caliber center and the Bucks defensive anchor. He wasn't done physically. He just made a decision for himself most people wouldn't dream of. So there was speculation. What really happened? Because he didn't just walk away for mental health. People said, oh, he's actually a dangerous psycho with that animal cruelty charge. Or, oh, it must have been really bad drugs involved. But when Sanders got out of that hospital, he put out a video to finally address the rumors.
I'm Larry Sanders. I'm a person. I'm a father. I'm a painter. I'm a musician. And sometimes I play basketball. I wish I could have said goodbye formally, to the Bucks. I want them to know that it was never about them. It's never about the fans or how they treated me, because that was awesome. The decisions are, for my family.
So he put out that video in 2015, and at the time, mental health was not something that people talked about in pro sports. Okay, maybe they did with Dennis Rodman, but let's be honest, Rodman was mostly looked at as a clown in the NBA. Guys later like DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love spoke out and made mental health more mainstream and serious, but Larry Sanders really was one of the first to make it a priority. Now the NBA doesn't even test for THC, so this dude really did come around in the wrong era. I mean, had this happened 10 years later, he wouldn't have been suspended and he probably could have gotten real help from the NBA. Now, after his recovery, Larry did try to make an NBA comeback that didn't stick, but by that time it didn't matter. He became a serial entrepreneur instead. Today he has a production company, a publishing company, wrote kids books, a movie script, produces music, and has a foundation to help people. Recently he started playing ball again in the Big Three and overseas, but his real legacy is showing that basketball players might be paid really well, but you cannot pay away mental health issues. And actually, he's probably one of the biggest success stories despite leaving the NBA in his prime. Some guys go broke or have personal issues decades after leaving the league because they keep kicking the can down the road. Larry took care of himself with a sacrifice most people wouldn't dream of. And even though he's not in the league anymore, Larry helps guys in the NBA today. He's become a quiet mentor for players who are struggling with their own mental health. Nobody says anything, but when they ask him to reach out, he listens, and he tells them what no one told him. You're not broken, you just need help. And the crazy thing is, he didn't even regret walking away. In an interview, Larry said, I was dying inside. I needed to leave to stay alive. I don't regret that. And now that mental health is actually talked about in the league, people look back on Larry Sanders in a whole different light now. He was never a villain. He was ahead of his time. And the money? Yeah, he walked away from $15 million, but he also walked towards something, toward his kids and his sanity and a life he actually wanted to live. So no, Larry Sanders didn't win a ring and he didn't make all defense. He never created a big two with Giannis like the Bucks hoped, but his legacy is even bigger. He showed the whole world that success doesn't always look like a trophy or a paycheck. Sometimes success is putting your mental health first, even when the whole world tells you not to. But another failure back to success story is Michael Beasley. This dude just let the world know that after the NBA, he lived in his car for 2 straight years. But the story of how he got back on top after that is even more wild.